the molecules that are moving up and down. Like this is the pressure difference is what creates a force. That is what is enabling the kites, aeroplanes, or the balloons to go up and down, right? And air is a mixture of different gases. We all have learned this. And anything that wants to fly that needs air, and air has the power to push and pull. I want you to remember this statement. Yeah, of course, it's a very simple statement, but yes, air has the power to push and pull. Now I have an interesting question. अभी पंखा चल रहा है, so is it generating the air? Then what it is doing? Pushing the air, exactly. In fact, when I was a small kid also, I used to always wonder, like, oh, this fan is able to generate the air, but it never generates the air. As per the same words, like air has the power to push and pull. The design of the fan blades is in such a way that it can, behind the fan, it has the power to collect all the air molecules, and in front of the fan, it can focus it in a particular direction. Right? So this is what air can be visualized like this. And let us talk about the definition of flight. Be it Superman flying or a bird flying, the flight definition goes like this. An object moves through a space without contacting any planetary surface. Right? So the act of moving through air with the aid of aerodynamic forces. So that words are very, very important. With the aid of aerodynamic forces. There is something called aerodynamic forces through which objects are able to fly through air. Right? So if we see very clearly, you can see the last line. Whether it be through the natural adaptations of living organisms or the engineering of human-made vehicles. This is very, very important. Natural adaptations of living organisms, like we see the birds, we see the dragonfly, those are all created by the God. And it is naturally adapted to fly. A bird can fly, but an animal cannot fly. Right? But still, if you want to make it fly, then what you can do? You can do engineering. Right? With the help of engineering of human-made vehicles. That is what is a flight or a drone. Right? Who invented flight? ये तो आप पता है, राइट ब्रदर्स 1903 अमेरिका. Or some people from Brazil also say that he is the inventor of flight. But there is a theory like from India, Shivkar Babji Talpati. So he is also claimed to be the inventor of flight. Okay. So as one person correctly pointed out, he is from Maharashtra. You are from Maharashtra? Okay. Fine. And again, this is a ever-going argument. If we sit and discuss about this, the 6 days will not be enough. Because the only reason is, during that time there were not much publicity. हो सकता है कि he might have invented very early than those two people. But due to the lack of publicity during that time, not to blame anyone, the Western media is very powerful and our media may be not there, due to which they may not be able to publicize properly. Maybe due to that reason he may not be well known. Anyway, that lot of discussions are there. Let's not focus on that, but just be aware that these are all the people who have contributed to this journey of flight. This flight is not like today you are seeing an Indigo flight or SpiceJet. It's not a one-day process. It doesn't happen overnight. A lot of people have worked really hard. Okay. As engineers, we should avoid those kind of conspiracies. Let us pay respect to all these people. Somehow or the other, they have given a very good amount of contribution. You can learn about them on the internet. Now let us talk about the very important subject, aerodynamics. So before understanding aerodynamics, let us try to understand what is the meaning of fluids. Okay. So fluids are the substances that flow and can take the shape of a container. Example, liquids, gases. And they have the ability to flow and deform under applied forces, distinguishing from solids. right? In solids, molecules are tightly packed, liquids little bit tighter, and gases freely packed. So there is a parameter called viscosity, a measure of resistance to flow which varies depending on temperature and pressures. There is another parameter called density that tells that mass per unit volume of a fluid. These are all basic terms I believe you all might have learned in your school days. So also apart from this viscosity and density, the best example of viscosity I can say coconut oil, mustard oil, kerosene, water, everything has its own way of flowing, right? So that's called viscosity. Density you all know, right? So 1 kg of iron, 1 kg of sponge. Due to more density, due to less density, the volume it occupies. Density is equal to mass by volume. So volume increases, it decreases. You all know this things, right? So apart from that, there is something called buoyancy. This is what very very important to us because we are planning to fly our drone, right? Fly our drone in a fluid, and air is also a fluid. So you should be in a position to correlate all these concepts. That's the agenda for day one. Then day two onwards, we will start digging into the understanding and assembling of floats. Okay. So buoyancy means ability to float. And who is the guy who invented this buoyancy? Like the principle? Very good. Archimedes. Surface tension, capillary action, all these things we know. So this fluid mechanics, like if we study about fluids, it's called as fluid mechanics. I think mechanical guys can easily correlate, right? So it is very crucial in various fields, including aerospace, automotive, civil, biomedical. So in that we have hydrodynamics, gas dynamics, and aerodynamics. My whole intention of telling this, explaining this slide is that to make you understand कहाँ से ये aerodynamics आया है, right? So if we talk very specifically in academic thing, we have mechanical engineering, under that we have fluid mechanics, then dynamics, under that aerodynamics. Maybe mechanical engineers can correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, so this is the evolution of that concept. Now let us talk about the real aerodynamics. Okay, so Mr. Ludwig Prandtl, he is considered as the father of modern aerodynamics. Okay, so it describes the way the objects move through air, as one person clearly pointed out. So these rules explain how an airplane is able to fly. If we are walking, obviously there is a physics or a rules, right? It is a general term used for problems arising from flight and other topics involving the flow of air. Whenever there is a flow of air, and whenever you want to do something out of that air, aerodynamics is there. As simple as that. So, as he told, it's areas concerning the air, dynamics meaning powerful. So, anything that moves through air is affected by aerodynamics. Your fan, you name it, that is flying through air, it has aerodynamics. Even cars and cycles are affected by aerodynamics. Best examples: car, rocket, why the nozzle is pointed, they can have a flat rocket design. No? Cycling, in sports cycling, why they bend their back and they drive, aerodynamics. Even a small millisecond matters a lot, right? Again, it's an applied science with many practical applications in engineering, and there are two types. One is external, another one is internal. So if we talk about the outside, like in an airplane, if we talk about the airfoil, fuselage, all these terms we will understand. Okay. We just remember that anything that is considered outside the body of an aeroplane is external aerodynamics, and anything that has to do with the internal is called internal aerodynamics. Now, again, I told you already, like, हमको purpose we should know. Why aerodynamics is important? Aerodynamics should be there. Airplane, blur, birds, beyond flight, frisbee, playing toy, na? That also uses aerodynamics. Boomerang, it has aerodynamics. Very important thing. It helps in saving the fuel. Okay, I'll show you that. There is something called air resistance, which is technically called as drag. Okay, so these are all the some of the words that is associated with this flight. I'll explain these terms in a very in-depth manner. Abhi just try to understand. Everything is covered, okay? Smooth moves, that is very, very important. And space bound. Even spaceships use aerodynamics. SpaceX ka rocket you might have seen. Like everywhere it is there, yeah. Anything. Let us have a. I mean, I told you why aerodynamics is important. Let us have some real world examples of where aerodynamics is used. So, what is this? Huh? Maglev. We can call it as bullet train and normal train. Hmm? This is an aerodynamics inside a drone. Aerodynamics of a building, Burj Khalifa. You can imagine. Dragonfly, a bird, God's creation. A cow, a cheeseburger. Sometimes people go very crazy to do aerodynamics of cheeseburger also. Maybe the mechanical people who are sitting here can tell me what is the significance of doing aerodynamics for a cheeseburger. You understood? Like all those lines you are seeing, na? Those are all like the aerodynamic forces. And this is how one of the examples where they are doing aerodynamic simulation in a F1 car. So how that spoiler should be designed, how that tire should be designed, right? This is another chart. Okay. So I was telling about aerodynamics can help you in saving the fuel efficiency. So this is a car. Okay. So this car is technically called as a convertible car. Convertible car, which means the roof can open and fold. The headlights, pop-up headlights, it will come out when it is needed, it will go inside. This is considered as an example, and what they try to do is take that car, 6 different scenarios. X-axis, 6 different scenarios. Y-axis, CD, drag coefficient. Drag means air resistance. Now let us try to understand the important variables. Pressure, density, temperature and flow velocity. So if we talk about pressure, you all are aware of this. Pressure is the force per unit area, right? And it's a scalar quantity. You know that what is the meaning of scalar quantity, vector quantity, right? Do we need to explain about that? Right. Let us directly go to the flight concept. Quickly, I'll cover this up. Okay. And the third point, amount of pressure depends on strength of force and size of surface area. Force increases, like force is directly proportional to pressure. Area is inversely proportional. And if we talk about atmospheric pressure, it is the pressure that is the force that is exerted by the air molecules in the Earth's atmosphere. Very clear? Just this point you need to remember. Whenever we go height, typically when an airplane flies at 35,000 or 35,000 feet, okay, you can just imagine an average human is 6 feet tall, and an airplane flies at a distance of 36,000 feet. So when height increases, pressure decreases. This is what you need to remember. Clear? Density, again, mass per unit volume. It tells how tightly a material is packed, right? It is a point property, it's a scalar quantity, and density can be different from different places, right? And if we talk about relative density, we are comparing that with the reference of water. So the density of water to the density of the material that we are covering. Okay. So here the main motto is like we are dealing with air density. Okay. So whether we should have high air density or low air density. So high air density means high amount of air molecules. So the more amount of air molecules you have, the more amount of time or the force you will get for your object to fly. Correct. If you have less dense air molecules, which means you have very less amount of air molecules present, which leads to you may need to spend more on your fuel. Again, this is an ideal case only. Sometimes this is advantages as well as disadvantages also. For an ideal flight, we need this kind of conditions like high air density, low air density. These are all some of the basics that you should be aware of. If we talk about temperature, again, temperature also plays a very important role. So if we imagine a high temperature gas, okay, the molecules and atoms are randomly rattling about high speeds. So you take a solid, you start heating it, what happens? The molecules will start vibrating, randomly moving here and there at the microscopic level, right? So temperature also plays a very important role in this aerodynamics, because you see when the engine runs, I was telling a slide about internal aerodynamics where you study about the aerodynamics that is going through the ducts of an airplane engine. So whenever that engine is running, it generates a lot of heat. So a lot of heat means the surrounding air molecules. Imagine this happening at 36,000 feet. Engine is generating a power and this air molecules are going inside the engine, and whatever the air that is going inside the engine is getting heated. The molecules are started getting rattling. The density changes, and accordingly the performance also changes. So how to design? This is another important parameter. Again, I'm giving a very basic idea only. It's not a very big idea. Just trying to make you aware that this is one of the parameter. Okay. Now, and if we talk about the most important laws and principles behind the flight. So we learned about the air, the flight, and we learned about the basics, right? The evolution, all those things. We understood what is the meaning of aerodynamics, the important variables of aerodynamics. Now we have learned laws and principles behind the flight. Okay. Again, trust me that these are all the things you have already learned. I'm not going to teach you a very important, like very mathematical things and all. Nothing like that. You all are aware about Newton's laws. That's it. Newton's law. This subtopic is over. उससे पहले we have something called Bernoulli's principle. Slide about Bernoulli's principle. You can go through this statement and you can go through these equations. But the main point here lies that how this principle is getting applied to a flight. That is very important. So now, and whenever a plane flies in the air, a stream of wind is getting hit on the wings, right? And something is happening. That something I'll explain later, but abhi just everyone remember that this is a plane. It has its own parts. The main component that generates the lift is the wings, and whenever it flies in the air, stream of wind or air goes through that, and something happens. Due to that, it is able to maintain its flight. And what I'm telling is that something is Bernoulli's principle. Due to that principle, it is able to fly. And now we will be trying to understand with an activity. So what I'll do, this is a paper, just a normal paper. ठीक है, इसमें कुछ मैजिकली कुछ नहीं है, just pure science for the respect of science. Okay, देख लीजिए. What I'm going to do, I'm going to keep this paper like this, and I'm going to blow. Okay, simple paper, keeping it like this, blowing it like this. Imagine that I am the source of wind, and this is the wings, wind and wings. Because I cannot move this in a very fast manner, so what I'm doing, I'm keeping it like this, so that I'll be able to continuously blow the air. Okay, okay. The fast moving air Okay, whenever I blow it like this, right? What happens? That fast moving air creates a region of low pressure. Either be molecules here, either be molecules here. But when you start blowing it, whatever the molecules present here, those are getting carried away. In comparison with this region, I am not anyway focusing this side. I am focusing only on this side. So what happens? Earlier, like both are at their own air molecules, right? But when I purposefully introduce a wind or a blow, this region, all the molecules are getting wiped away, which creates a low pressure area, and this creates a high pressure area. We all might have learned this concept in science also, biology also. There is something called diffusion. The movement of molecules or liquids from region of higher concentration to lower concentration. There is something called siphon. Na? Siphon works on that. We are going to understand the parts of an airplane. This is very, very important. Okay. So these are all some of the parts of an airplane. Anyway, this cockpit, we have fuselage, jet engine, wing, all those parts are there. So listen, guys, listen, pay attention. So there is something called cockpit, which is for command and control purposes. And maybe whenever during the break time, you can have a look at one purpose. And we have something called wing. Wing, we all know that it is used to generate lift. Very clear. But what is this too? Fuel tank and braking. थोड़ा सा अजीब लग रहा है. Wings are used to generate lift. And fuel tank कैसे हो सकता है? Where I will be showing you a real how a brake is applied in an airplane. Okay. And this is like the main body, like how we have the entire skeletal system that is holding all our other systems. We have this fuselage. It is used to hold the things together. It is used to carry the payload. Payload matlab passengers, cargo, right? Now we are going to discuss about aerodynamic forces. If you want to raise your plane, obviously your lift should be greater than your weight. If you want to, you don't want to stay in the air for the entire lifetime, right? You want to come to the ground and do some other work, right? So the other condition, lift is less than weight. Condition clear? Any doubts? Thank you. Now dealing with the other two, thrust is the forward force produced by an aircraft propulsion system such as jet engines or propellers. It propels the aircraft through the air and counteracts the drag. I told like lift versus weight, thrust versus drag. Now if we talk about drag, opposite of thrust, the air resistance or the resistance that opposes the forward motion. Or the Omni versus Formula 1 car. Yes. Which has more drag? Omni or Formula 1, which has more drag. Thrust is greater than drag. Your plane or your Formula 1 car accelerates. Again, it depends from different design to design. If you talk about jet engine, that is different. Hypersonic, supersonic planes, that is different. All those designs are different. All these things, whatever we are teaching, is just an ideal level and at a very fundamental level. But if we start discussing about each and everything, then it differs from design of an aircraft, like different designs, different. Now coming to the very important question. How does an airplane lift off and fly in the air? Three major reasons for an airplane lift. So one, we already know, the wings that generate the lift. The tail, it also has some role to play. And the third one is engines. We are not going to deal with engines anyway because Those engines are like jet engines or turboprop engines, right? And this has nothing to do with our drones, because in drones, these are all the three reasons due to which an airplane is generating lift. And we want our drone or our airplane to fly, which means we are focusing on the lift component. Once we are able to lift, obviously if you reduce the lift, other things it will come down automatically. You understood? Four forces are there. Due to gravity only, we are struggling our best to generate the lift. Now let us understand the Bernoulli's principle.
Is Bernoulli's principle. The principle states, as the velocity of a fluid, in this case air, increases, its internal pressure decreases. We can visualize this by having air flow through a tube with a narrower middle section, which we call a venturi. As air enters the tube, it is traveling at a known velocity and pressure. When it arrives at the narrower portion, the velocity increases to allow the air through. As the air's velocity increases, the air's pressure decreases. Then, as the air exits the narrower portion, it returns back to its original velocity and pressure. Now, let's flatten the top part of the tube. Granted, the effect will not be as pronounced, but there will still be a change in velocity and pressure as the air moves through. Now, how does this relate to a wing? Well, if we replace the bottom protrusion of the tube with a wing, in essence, we have the same thing as a venturi. As the air passes over the wing, each layer of air gets deflected less and less until finally we reach a layer where the air is not disturbed at all from the wing. This can be thought of as the top of the venturi. An airplane's wing is shaped similar to that of a venturi. The top is rounded while the bottom is relatively flat. Because of this, the air traveling over the wing will increase in speed, and as a result, will have a lower pressure.
Able to understand what we did that same experiment. Same. Nothing fancy.
Than the air below the wing. This imbalance in pressure is called a pressure gradient. Wings are designed to create this kind of pressure gradient because air always moves from areas of high pressure to areas of low pressure. Since the wing is stuck in between the two areas of unequal pressure, it is lifted towards the area of low pressure by the force of the higher pressure air trying to move to the low pressures.
So understood. Same, we have already covered everything. So you have the structure, the lift is getting generated because fast moving air and high speed reduced pressure, low speed increased pressure. Same.